For my project, I researched how adoption has changed in Korea from as early as in the Joseon dynasty up until the present day. To this day, blood lineage is of great importance, but it became particularly important in Korea later in the development of the Joseon dynasty. At the beginning of the Joseon dynasty and before the rise of Confucianism, adoption was more acceptable and couples would adopt males and females from either side of their family in order to ensure the existence of a head of household. Eventually, though, as Confucianism rose, Korea switched to a very patriarchal, male-dominated society. Adoption of only males was carried out, and it was typically only from the man's father's side of the family. After the Korean War, many children were left orphaned. There were also a large amount of war orphans abandoned by their mothers for being half Korean. Because of pervading Confucian values, these children were seen as having unpure blood and were thus poor candidates for adoption into Korean families. The United States during this time wanted to show the world how open they were to aiding foreign countries, which is when international adoption began. Many American servicemen and humanitarian workers in Korea sought out adoption of war orphans after seeing how many children were left in need of care. By the 1970s, children who were put up for adoption mainly came from young, unwed mothers. These mothers, as well as the children born to them, were highly stigmatized, showing the pervasion of Confucian values. Currently, Korea is trying to increase its number of domestic adoptions because of embarrassment over being such a highly successful nation, yet sending the message they're incapable of supporting their children. As a result, Korea issued the Special Adoption Act that has significantly changed adoption law. Issued in 2012, the act greatly suppresses international adoption and also makes keeping an adoption a secret impossible for birth mothers. For example, birth mothers have to go through family court, putting their babies into the public family registry. Unfortunately, Confucian values still affect society, and the stigma on young unwed mothers is high. A larger number of children are now being abandoned given the inability of birth mothers to keep their adoptions a secret. The restriction on international adoption has also increased the number of children remaining in the care of orphanages or foster homes. The rise in abandoned babies has many orphans left on city streets, putting their survival at risk. As a result, a pastor in Korea created the baby box where mothers can safely leave their babies. Some people criticize the pastor, saying that he's encouraging mothers to keep abandoning their children, while others applaud him, saying that he's saving many babies' lives.
It's a moment Pastor Lee Jong-rak has experienced many times. The arrival of a tiny bundle. A newborn left in his purpose-built baby box.
In May to June of 2014, I traveled to South Korea where I had an internship working in an orphanage in Naju. There I mostly got to spend time caring for the infants and children of the Iwa orphanage, where I was able to see firsthand how the Special Adoption Act was affecting children. Out of the nearly 50 children living in the orphanage, only 10 were officially being adopted. Most of the children were well over the age of 1 and were said to be highly unlikely to get adopted. What's worse, once children reach a certain age, they're no longer eligible for international adoption due to stronger ties to Korean culture, despite the fact that many families around the world would be happy to adopt these older children. I also got to spend time with birth mothers who were housed near the orphanage. Most of the women were very young and all unmarried. I learned that most of them hoped their children would be adopted internationally so as not to have to constantly wonder if they're seeing them on the subway or on the street their whole lives. Many of the mothers had moved to the birth mother home in order to keep their pregnancies and adoptions a secret, and some were even disowned by their parents, further proof that Confucian ideals are prominent. In order to actually make the Special Adoption Act work, or to even decrease the children who are put up for adoption, many factors need to be addressed. The wage gap, shown to put women making 39% less than their male equivalents in Korea in 2012, needs to be fixed in order for single mothers to be able to support their children. The high cost of education should also be addressed, given that many parents put off having children and sometimes give up having them at all due to not being able to afford the necessary education they need in Korea's competitive society. The social stigma surrounding adoption also needs to be addressed. The government should be looking to invest more in organizations like MPAC, or Mission to Promote Adoption in Korea, so there might be an increase in couples willing to consider adoption. On the other hand, there is a photo campaign series started in 2003 by the SWS Adoption Agency. This campaign hosts photos of celebrities posing with adoption-eligible babies that has raised awareness of adoption and has started to minimize the social stigma surrounding it. Further emphasizing the need for social change and support organizations was a study done on Korean adoptive parents. The study found that adoptive parents are very unlikely to openly discuss the adoption with their children, but that discussion is more likely in parents who attend support groups such as MPAC. It was also found that parents had less satisfaction with their adoptions as their children aged and became curious about their adoptions. This shows Korea needs to be providing these parents with information and educating them on how to deal with the questions their children will likely have. There is an obvious need for the normalization of adoption in Korea and for an increase in resources available to adoptive parents. Overall, it seems Korean parents and society in general may simply not be ready for domestic adoption.